Welcome to the final days of 2022. It's been a fun year, and what better way to celebrate to the end of the year than to spend ludicrous amounts of money on toy cars. However, if you're new to the hobby and have no idea what brands to go for, you might be a bit lost, and that's where I intend to help. The last time I did a video like this was almost 2 years ago now, and even then I only went over a small subsection of brands that made car chassis specifically for 10th scale. Now that I have a bit more experience in the world of RC racing, I feel like I can make a video like this a bit better than before. In this video, I'll be going over pretty much every major RC brand I can personally think of. A few rules for this video. I'll only be going over racing specific brands as that's the focus of this channel, so brands like Traxxas and Arma won't be featured here. Secondly, I'll be dividing this video up by sections, so if you want to skip to a specific section, feel free to check out the timestamps below. And thirdly, I'll be going over off-road racing only, so that does not include drag cars and or oval on-road cars, so keep that in mind. Also, a small little update. I talked with a few of my subscribers thinking that I have stopped uploading. This is not the case. If you want to see when I actually upload a video, it isn't enough to just hit the subscribe button anymore. You have to hit the bell icon next to it in order to get up-to-date notifications as to when I upload. So, if you're new or already subscribed, be sure to hit the subscribe button as well as the bell icon to get notifications as to when I actually upload. With that out of the way, let us proceed. Now when I say a chassis brand, I mean brands that make the actual kits you run, not just the aluminum part underneath. First, let's start out with arguably the most popular brand for racing these days, Team Associated. Team Associated has been around for a little while now, and as a result have built themselves a following over the years. Their main characteristics in terms of why you buy one over the competition would be their unmatched part support and their durability, at least on the 10th scale side. On the 8th scale side, they also have a really good part support, but only recently have they garnered a reputation for durability with their new B4 and T4 RC8 platforms. Speaking of which, the cars they make are two-wheel drive buggies, four-wheel drive buggies, two-wheel drive stadium trucks, two-wheel drive short course trucks, e-buggies, e-truggies, nitro truggies, and nitro buggies. Next up we have TLR or Team Losi Racing. TLR is a brand owned by Horizon Hobby and as a result is probably the most financially backed RC racing brand out there. TLR, much like Associated, have built themselves a following over the years, and as a result, if there is one company that could rival Associated in terms of popularity in the US, it would be TLR. Part support in the US tends to be on par with Associated and even surpasses them in some places like Beach Hobbies, but outside of the US this is not the case. They are very much a domestic brand to the United States. As for durability, well personally I haven't seen them break too often, but that's not exactly something they're best known for. What they are known for is having really good setups straight out of the box. The last Losi I owned came with a setup that worked perfectly for my track at the time, and this seems to be the case for a lot of their cars, as well as the 22X4 and the 22 5.0 Elite. Speaking of cars, they make two-wheel drive buggies, four-wheel drive buggies, two-wheel drive stadium trucks, four-wheel drive short course trucks, two-wheel drive short course trucks, e-buggies, e-truggies, nitro buggies, and nitro truggies. One thing I will say that is a negative for TLR on the 10th scale side is their two-wheel drive short course truck and stadium truck are a little bit on the dated side compared to their competition. So much so that CLR drivers have gone on to make their own stadium truck conversions for the 5.0 Elite transmission, not to mention the lowrider kit for their short course truck which has been out of stock for a little while. Schumacher is a brand located in the UK that I don't have too much experience with. I used to own one back in the early days of this channel, but I didn't hold on to it for too long at the time as I financially just couldn't maintain it. You know, buying spare parts for it online and such. Anyway, Schumacher kits for the most part are tailored towards carpet and AstroTurf as those are the two most popular surfaces in the UK and by extension Europe. So if you happen to be in those places or your home track is indeed carpet or AstroTurf, Schumacher may be an option for you. However, if you're in the US or on a dirt style track, the amount of work that would go into making it work there might not be worth it unless you're already a great driver and great setup master. Another thing to say about Schumacher is that their designs are very unique. For example, they are one of the few brands out there that doesn't use a shaft drive system for their four-wheel drive buggy. They use a belt drive system instead. This is both a positive and a negative. The positive being that they are unique and that there's nothing else like it on the market. The negative is the same, as building a kit that isn't like anything else on the market can be a bit jarring if you're coming over from a different brand. Also, if you're a beginner, unless you're in a place where Schumacher is run regularly, don't get a Schumacher as they are very complicated to build. Schumacher makes two-wheel drive buggies, four-wheel drive buggies, and two-wheel drive stadium trucks. They also make tires specifically for turf and carpet. On the other side of the spectrum, we have Tekno. Tekno is a fairly recent brand to the RC world as they only really became a thing in the early 2010s. Currently, I own a Tekno EB410.2 and I must say it's been quite good to me, although it is a bit on the heavy side for stock racing. In fact, bulkiness and tankiness is something that Tekno is very much known for. They very rarely break, and if they do, you're probably doing something wrong. Another thing about Tekno cars that would also make them very good for beginners is their price. Their 10 scale stuff tends to be on the cheaper side, and for the most part until recently, their 8 scale stuff was usually on the cheaper side too. Even with their prices these days, they still give you a lot of value for the money. One thing that I will say that could be considered a negative for Tekno is that you can't really tune them the same way you tune other cars. I mean, you kinda can, but putting a million weight in the center diff of an EB410 will make it cry. Tekno makes four-wheel drive buggies, mini truggies, e-buggies, e-truggies, nitro buggies, and nitro truggies. Now another brand that is more popular overseas than it is here in the US would have to be Yokomo. Yokomo is another brand that has been around for a little while now, and for the longest time they haven't really deviated from what they originally intended to build, that being 10 scale racing machines for both on-road and off-road. Lots of people like to say that they're a carbon copy of Associated in terms of design and vice versa, and if you were to look at both of them side by side, it could be easy to see why the people would say that. The only thing that holds back Yokomo is their sometimes questionable durability and lack of part support in the States. What helps them a lot is their great setups out of the box and their frankly excellent part quality and manual directions. They make two-wheel drive buggies, four-wheel drive buggies, and two-wheel drive stadium trucks. One company that, as far as I know, very recently got out of the 10th scale game is Kyosho. Pretty much everything I said about Yokomo can be applied to Kyosho, only this time it's in regards to 8th scale. Their parts are very high quality, it's a bit hard to find sometimes, and their durability doesn't quite measure up to other brands I've seen on the track, but do keep in mind their kits are still 8th scale in nature, so if you do break something, chances are it was your own fault. They make nitro buggies, nitro truggies, e-buggies, and e-truggies. Hot Bodies, or HB for short, is a brand that has also begun to gain quite a following, at least here in the US. They're mostly known for their 8th scale kits, but I've recently started pushing more and more into the 10th scale game with their new D2 racing buggy, which, funnily enough, is currently the same price as their e-buggy and e-truggy. In terms of durability, they are quite well sorted for the most part. They also seem to have a lot more local support, at least where I am, so I'd say they're probably one of the better options for people looking to get into the hobby of RC racing in the 8th scale space. I've also seen them break, but not without a lot of prior use and abuse thrown at them. Like I mentioned before, they make e-buggies, e-truggies, nitro buggies, nitro truggies, and very soon, two-wheel drive buggies. Sworkz is a brand that's trying to make more and more headway into the RC world as time goes on. Until recently, they were kind of a niche brand that only really made 8th scale nitro buggies and sometimes e-buggies, much like a Gamma, which is another brand that I could mention, but I know almost nothing about. However, after being picked up by Beach Hobbies, probably the second largest RC distributor in the US for racing specifically, they jumped up a lot in popularity, at least here in the US. I personally don't have too much first-hand experience with them, but considering how popular they have become, even at a club level, it's safe to say that they're definitely at least worth looking at, especially if you happen to live somewhere in the southeastern US where beach RC tends to be more popular and attend more events. They make two-wheel drive buggies, four-wheel drive buggies, nitro truggies, nitro buggies, e-truggies, and e-buggies. They're also one of the few brands out there that make RTR vehicles out race specs, so there's that as well. Mugen Seiki is known for two things: extreme quality and extreme prices. They tend to be more popular at larger events and seem to be more popular overseas, much like Yokomo is, but for 8th scale. On the other hand though, Mugen cars tend to be quite durable and fit together just a bit better than other cars do for some reason. Once again though, the only things holding them back from being much more popular are their large prices and lack of part support at some local tracks. They make e-buggies, e-truggies, nitro buggies, and nitro truggies. Xray is a brand that I have a special relationship with, as they are the first racing brand I ever drove on a track, specifically the Xray T3 touring car at the late Hotshot RC. One thing that's good about Xray right out of the gate is that if you only wanted to run Xray cars, you really could, as they literally make every single type of racing rig you can think of, from mini truggies to 8th scales to 10th scales to 12th scale pan cars. If you can think of it, chances are Xray makes it. Despite this, their part support depending on where you go tends to be on the lighter side. Not as bad as say Schumacher or Yokomo, but not much better. Along with this is their complexity, especially on the 8th scale side when it comes to their limited slip diffs. The last thing that kind of puts Xray down is their overall atmosphere. One of their drivers, CJ Jellin, didn't have very nice things to say about their work environment on and off the track, and as a result he left. This has kind of left a sort of stain on their reputation ever since, as people tend to treat them as pompous or holier than thou. Personally, I haven't seen this as the case at all, as all of the Xray drivers that I have met have been very friendly, so make of that what you will. Anyway, like I said, they make pretty much every single RC racing rig you can think of, so feel free to search that on your own. And that's all of the RC chassis brands I can think of off the top of my head. I know there are some RC brands I may have missed, like MST for on-road and Serpent for off-road, but I have very little experience with them, like at all, so I didn't feel confident talking about them. This video is only the first of a two-parter, as next time I'll be going over RC accessory brands, you know, ESCs, motors, and stuff like that. So if you want to know the moment I upload that video, be sure to hit the subscribe button along with the bell icon to get notified as soon as when I actually upload that video. Speaking of which, if you want to support me another way, you can subscribe to my Patreon, where I post updates on when my videos are going to come out and what they're going to be about. Speaking of which, I'd like to thank my patrons Michael Williams, RC World Discord server, Casey Nix, Ben Reeves, Ryan Lamb, Joe Jenkins, Juliet Lovelace, The Mailman 110, Brian Lofton, Ricky Ekenlow, Precision Key, Rob Bedingfield, and especially Morrison Watt. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.